Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, April 29th, 2018, the 14th of ER 5778, coming to you from Gush Etzion, Israel. Hope you're doing well. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me during the week via email, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, at Josh Hasten. We've been through this before here on the program, where unfortunately a horrible thing happens between Monday and Monday when our show airs, and I come on the air and I report about it and we talk about it and discuss it and bring on experts, or sometimes I just rant about whatever it is, and most of the time it's unfortunately a terror attack, and it makes my blood boil, and we're angry and we're sad and all these emotions come out. This week is a little bit different because of what happened here in Israel this past Thursday. We had unseasonable weather throughout the country. We had severe rainstorms, thunderstorms, lightning, hail, and flooding. And this past Thursday, 10 Israeli high schoolers, young children, 17 and 18 years old, 10 of them, 9 girls and a boy, were killed in a horrible accident as they were hiking in the Judean Desert near the Dead Sea area, if you're familiar with Israel. So here we are now. It is Sunday when we're recording this show, several days later, and the sting is still there. I cannot even imagine. Shalom Neda, as they say, may we not know such sorrow, what the families are going through. But the difference really between Israel and the rest of the world, in my opinion, from what I know, growing up in the U.S., we're all really one family here. We really, really are. This isn't a situation, and I know if you're living in California and something bad happens in Florida, you're upset, and it could bother you, and you could be very sad about it. But here in Israel, it's such a small place where everyone knows everybody, where one of the girl's sisters lives in my hometown community, where I was over Shabbat, was the home of another one of the kids who was killed in this horrible event. So the entire community showed up to pay their respects at his funeral. So you have 10 mourning families now here, and we just wish them all the best and only good. And there's no really words that I could say that would really heal at this point. So I was asking myself as I was trying to nap on Shabbat afternoon, yesterday afternoon, I couldn't sleep. I was just so upset by what had happened 2 days before. You know, how could I try to make any type of sense out of this horrible tragedy? What could I do? And I thought maybe I should turn to my spiritual side and seek out God, seek out some spirituality in making some kind of sense to this horrible tragedy. So my guest today is Rav Natan Alexander. He is an educator. He's the founder of RavNatan.com. It's an education resource enhancing family relationships, bringing peace and passion to lives. And I want to get to the work the important work that he does after the break a little bit later on. But I wanted to really talk to him initially here, Rav Natan, because I was selfish, myself suffering as just an Israeli, as a Jew, seeing this horrible tragedy and reading today's Jerusalem Post, learning a little bit about the lives of these young high schoolers whose existence in this world were snuffed out way too soon. So Rav Natan Alexander, welcome here to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry to be here at such a time.
Yeah, I would say, it'd be better to have you on just to talk about the other work you do, which we will get to, enhancing people's lives and their relationships. But I just want to start by asking if you could just describe how you're feeling now, 72 hours here. And what I said on Facebook was, it feels like another Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron. That was what I was feeling on Thursday. Not comparing the death of 20,000 soldiers and people killed in terror attacks, but it just had the aura on Friday here as the funerals were taking place of another Memorial Day. What are your thoughts initial?
So, Josh, I think that, first of all, it's really important that we don't rely on any other man to give us any answers. I think that these things happen and we don't have answers to them. as we know, the prophets say, Lo machshavotai machshavotechem, my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways. And that's just how it is. There are certain tragedies in life that we can either accept or we can allow them to pain us. But no man is going to give an answer. No man can tell us why the Holocaust happened. No man can tell us why a terror attack happens, or God forbid, why 10 young lives have been taken from us. But to just share some of my feelings with you, I was speaking to some people in America and trying to explain. I said, one of the most painful things about this is that the Jewish people are not used to losing people this way. We unfortunately are very used to losing soldiers. We're used to people dying in terror attacks. But a natural disaster is something that is just something we don't deal with, we don't think about. And therefore, I think people are at even more of a loss of how to mourn this and how to deal with it. I think that definitely at this moment, during the Shiv'ah, the 7-day mourning period, is a time where, people want answers. People want to know how this happened, who can we hold accountable for it, because then we feel better for, in inverted commas, hanging someone for the mistake or the issue. But now is not the time to do that. Now is the time to mourn and sit and feel with the families and support the families the Jewish way, which is to cry with them and to support them as much as possible. Another thing that I found very, very inspirational was, they announced the funerals on the radio. Now, we say, Mika Amcha Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz, who is like you, Israel? In what country in the world, what people in the world announce to strangers across the country, if you would like to come and mourn, if you would like to come and bury these people, come and join us. Like maybe you would think, okay, there's a wedding, everyone should be invited, right? Okay, yeah, cool, I'll come and dance at someone else's wedding, free food, let's go do it. We're talking about a funeral. What a special people we are. That not only are we inviting people into our most personal place of mourning, but the people actually go, people actually attend, and people take on these children as along with any other people that we lose in disasters as our own children, our own brothers and our own sisters.
It is truly a unique country. I mean, we get together as one for happy times, and unfortunately, it reminds me again. I mentioned Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, the unity in 2014 when the 3 boys were kidnapped and killed, and how that brought together a country. I don't know if this is on that level, but still, as you so eloquently just said, I mean, we are, I believe, the only group that does something like this, that gathers for good, and unfortunately and oftentimes for bad. I know that, and I've seen it amongst young people especially, firsthand. Adults also, I know the tears and crying, and people of all ages really just destroyed or torn completely by this tragedy. What would you say to, let's say, high schoolers or kids who are listening to the show who are themselves perhaps here in Israel, who in a week or two will be going on end-of-the-year trips, or also in either pre-military academies or in high school, who I saw over the weekend. As I said, I was in one of the locations where one of the kids was from. I saw them, actually in the synagogue shedding tears. What do you say to that young person, a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old who may have lost a friend, a peer, or just somebody who knows somebody else? Because there is, in Israel, as we say, there's no more than 2 or 3 degrees of separation. What would you tell that young person?
Stop and feel. Western society is so used to finding excuses to carry on as quickly as possible. People are so afraid of feeling pain. but pain is an important part of life. Tears are an important part of life. Being held and holding others and relating to others who are going through pain are beautiful character traits. They're important character traits. So the first thing I would say to that 17, 18, and 70 and 80-year-old is just let the emotions take you. Allow yourself to be a part of this mourning period, because very quickly people are going to get up, they're going to turn on their phones, they're going to be posting things all over the Facebook, they're going to go back to school, they'll go into the army, they'll go to work, and before we know it, it'll be a year's time and people will say, wow, it's the memorial, I can't believe it's been a year. So the first thing to do, and the Torah is very powerful about this, when Aharon, the high priest, died, they stopped and they cried for 30 days. We live in a society that emotions are shunned upon. A man crying, what do you think? He's a soldier, what's he crying? He's a man, stand up. No, we've got to cry, we've got to feel, we've got to be real. Then, after the 7 days or the 30 days, is the time to jump into action. Time to do something. We can't bring these people back. We can never bring them back. But we can continue their memory. We can continue, and it's a very, very Jewish and Israeli thing. You know, I work for a charity organization, King's Ransom. There are so many charity organizations in Israel, and so many of them are named after someone we've lost, because action is so important to people to carry on someone's soul, someone's work in this world when they've been taken too early. So for now, the answer is stop and feel and cry and allow yourself to feel. Then we need to, as a Jewish people and those that love us and care for us and are blessed through them blessing us, we need to jump into action and continue these 10 lives in whatever way we can down in this world, through good deeds, through love, through acceptance, through the love of the land of Israel, which they literally died within.
Let me ask you this then. That's a very powerful answer. You know, there is often the term thrown around following a again, not comparing the two, but following a terror attack, you hear about the resiliency, especially in Israel, the Israeli people. A bus, I remember when I made Aliyah in 2002, it was almost a daily occurrence where you had a cafe or a bus being blown up by a terrorist, and then literally an hour later, the scene was cleared, scene was cleaned up, and people were at that same bus stop, for example, waiting for the next bus, and people applauded and said, you know, that shows how resilient we are as a nation and as a people. And I hear that side of it. On the other hand, there are often times, and I've talked about this, and I'm not getting into politics at this point, usually I do on my show, but on the other hand, I sometimes say that maybe that's not the way we should be doing it. Maybe instead of jumping on that next bus and, claiming that that's a victory against the terrorists, going back to our lives and showing, again, the word resiliency, our resiliency, maybe it's time not to jump on that bus and take that time to mourn, to feel the loss before going back to our normal lives. And I'm not saying it in a political context, but in terms of these kids, is it the wrong approach? And it seems like that is kind of what you were saying, to just jump back on the bandwagon, go back. And I'm not judging, but I saw, the very next day there were people out in the Judean Desert who were, chasing the storm and the floods and going to see the waterfalls and whatnot. And I'm not judging them, but what would you say? Which one is it?
It's an amazing question, Josh, and I think that it's up to each person to answer that for themselves, and for us to not allow ourselves to step into judgment.
Yeah, no judgment at all. I'm going to be clear with that, 100%.
Because mourning is a very, very difficult thing. So is happiness. So is anything that's polarized. People, well, I wouldn't be that happy or I wouldn't be that sad. But people have to be real with themselves about what they need to do, what they're able to do. And I would imagine, I don't want to, God forbid, speak on behalf of the families, but I think that the families would be happy with any reaction as long as it's with kavod, with honor to their children. About resilience, I'm no prophet, but I actually think that the nation of Israel is going to find it harder to get up and move on. Yeah, there are people back out there, right, in the desert doing, in the same areas and whatever. But I think that part of that resilience is also you can't win when it comes to a terrorist attack. Like, we'll show you that in, wherever the terrorists came from, you're going to turn on the TV and see us back at the buses, back at the shops. Something that I think is going to be more difficult with this case is there's really no one that we need to show, hey, we're over this. It was not, a terrorist that sent them there. It was not an attack that happened. And therefore, I think that it might be a little bit more difficult for us to get up and get moving after such a terrible occasion.
You are listening to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My guest today is Rav Natan Alexander, Rabbi Natan Alexander, and we are going to switch gears after the break, but I really thought it was, the most appropriate thing to do is to bring on a rabbi, a Rav, here who lives in the land of Israel to share his thoughts on this horrible tragedy of the death of 10 young souls, 10 students here in Israel, instead of getting into everything else going on in the country. And as you know, my listeners know, there's always something to talk about, whether it's Hamas on the Gaza border and all the other stuff going on, a lot of important things as well. But I really wanted to not speak to a politician or an expert on what happened or who's pointing fingers at who, and all that will come out in the news in the days and months ahead. But we are going to take a break and come right back and talk to Rav Natan about the other amazing work that he does to benefit the Jewish people here in the land of Israel and around the world. Again, if you're listening to Israel Uncensored, get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
For her to say that because of her discomfort with the prime minister, that she is not even going to come to Israel to receive this prize.
Tune in to an exclusive interview with Michael Medved, one of the most successful Jewish talk show hosts of America, has to say about Natalie Portman and the scandal about her refusing to accept a $2 million prize in Israel.
I think because she is Israeli originally, and I know my family in Israel always looked at Natalie Portman. Yes, she is on the left and she is an artiste, but she's one of ours.
That's Inside Israel Today, here on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com.
We are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is April 29th, 2018. Sunday, we're recording here in Gush Etzion, the 14th of ER 5778. Pesach Sheni. That is actually today's mini holiday in Israel. We're not going to get into the details or the meanings of Pesach Sheni. Look it up. Have yourselves a piece of matzah if you didn't get to over Pesach. But Google Pesach Sheni, second Passover, and a lot of people probably don't even realize. I don't think growing up I realized this was a mini holiday here, just 29 days after the first day of Passover. So we talked to Rav Natan in the first half of the show, if you missed any of it, about the horrible incident in which 10 young Israeli children were killed in the flash floods this past Thursday. So if you missed any part of the show and you're still struggling, go back and listen to Rav Natan's words. It is very, very helpful in this difficult time for the people in Israel and those who love Israel and Jews around the world, and those who really understand what it's like to live here and be part of one big family. But we're going to move on here because Rav Natan is also an educator, and he has a website. It's called ravnatan.com, R-A-V, Natan, N-A-T-A-N.com. It's an education resource enhancing family relationships, bringing peace and passion to our lives. I mean, who doesn't need help with peace and passion in our lives. I mean, every one of us needs a little bit of help, and now we have a resource, an outlet to go get that help. Welcome back, Rav Natan.
Thank you very much, Josh.
So we're going to switch gears entirely here and talk about your resource there, ravnatan.com. Why did you establish it? What's the purpose? What's it for? And how can it help us, those who are listening to the program today?
Okay, so, if we can follow in from what the tragedy that we were talking about, one of the things that I think people start to ask themselves when they view tragedies for other families is understanding who my family is and what they mean to me. Is my spouse just my spouse? Is my child the person who keeps me awake at night or uses my credit card, right? Depending on what age they are. Or are they an entire life? Are they an entire world? And how would I, God forbid, feel if I lost them the way that these families have lost their children? So I'm an educator. I've been an educator for almost 20 years. In schools, outside schools, youth groups, you name it. And a few years ago, 5 years ago, I realized that there was one area of education that especially the Jewish world, but everywhere, runs away from. And that is relationships and sexuality. And I believe I was born in the wrong generation. I should have been a chalutz, in the 20s and 30s, draining the swamps of Israel.
A
pioneer. And I decided, with my wife's blessing, of course, to be a pioneer and step out there and talk about relationships and sexuality, which sometimes they go together and sometimes they don't, between our spouses, our relationships with our children. People get a little bit worried, like, peace and passion. Why are you saying passion with your children? Well, how many of you are passionate to be husbands and wives, and as passionate to be fathers and mothers? How passionate are we to be brothers and sisters and to look after and to invest in our entire family? So I went out there and I've been teaching ever since to Jews, to Christians all around the world, in Israel, in America, in Australia, South Africa. And thank God lots of people are listening, and quite a few people are making some major changes in their life. Because it's not only about inspiration. I try to make sure to give practical tools as well. Because people, you can hear the rabbi talk and go, wow, he spoke so well. What did he speak about? I don't know, I don't remember, right? So it's very, very important to give practical tools which are not given in school, right? In school, we learn 1 + 1 = 2. We learn where, Afghanistan is on the map, right? But do we learn how to communicate with our spouse when we disagree about something? Do we learn how to deal with a lack in our bank account, but yet continuing to have a loving relationship for that man or woman who's not providing for us the way that they promised they would under the chuppah in the marriage ceremony? So that's what I deal with. And apart from that, there are a lot of sexual issues that happen for people in the Jewish world, in the non-Jewish world, in the religious and the non-religious world. There are really no barriers between us in that. And so I'm open and very happy to talk about those issues. I have the backing of some amazing sex therapists in Israel, David Ribner, Tali Rosenbaum, Arielle Perry. All of those people have helped me in what I'm trying to do, educating the world about relationships and sexuality.
So this can be a very sensitive issue for people. I mean, you mentioned that, this isn't, an arena perhaps that, as you said, isn't discussed enough in formal education and whatnot. What is your format when you present to crowds of people, to groups, or maybe perhaps, I don't know if you do any one-on-one talks as well, and how are you able to get them to express themselves on something that maybe is very, very intimate or sensitive, or something that perhaps otherwise they wouldn't want to share with a group of people, or perhaps wouldn't want to share with you? I mean, what are the tools that you use in order to really get at whatever it is that is affecting someone's relationship, whether it's with a spouse or with a child or somebody else in the family?
So it really depends in what arena, as you say, we're dealing with it. I do one-on-one counseling with individuals. I do couples counseling. And at the same time, I also do online webinars also speak to big crowds that are all there. So it depends in what arena it is. When it's one-on-one in couples counseling, it's about trust. It's about allowing the time and the trust to set in to then allow the couple or the individual to open up and let me into their lives, to try and let me help them and give them some skills and tools. The interesting thing is, most of the time when it comes to couples counseling, it's the wife who reaches out to me, sends an email or something on Facebook, and they drag their husband along. So the trust is mostly needing to be built between me and the man. And it's not an easy thing for a man to sit opposite another man and after time hear, listen, this is where you could grow. These are tools that you could use. It's not simple. Put it that way. It's not simple.
I hear what you're saying, and, I would probably say that that's normal because guys, I guess without stereotyping, are usually one to be perceived as more macho and more closed and not wanting to get help or ask for help. I mean, isn't that the norm? Wouldn't that be the norm? I mean, maybe it's, I see what you're saying in terms of the wives who are actually reaching out to you, but, isn't that the norm from what you've learned over the years?
It's very much the norm, but the norm doesn't have to be accepted. Part of the process is to allow the man to see what he's losing if he doesn't actually pay attention, if he doesn't do something about it. And there's ways to speak to the man to let him understand certain things. Even when it's couples counseling, most of the time it's sometimes together, both of them, sometimes it's them separate. And you can talk to the man in a certain way when it's just two guys talking. And the truth is that sometimes the barriers get broken down, that we actually become mates, become, friends, that therefore it's much easier to talk through things because it's two guys sharing and helping each other grow. But that's just, one of the strategies that can be used. When it's talking about big crowds, it doesn't have to be that they are actually giving back any information. They like to just receive and write notes, and poke each other and say, told you so, which I try and get them not to do. But you know what? The Gemara gives us the answer. One of the great rabbis used to stand up in front of his very serious students and tell a joke. Even though he was discussing Torah, you need to soften the people up, become trustworthy, and then be truthful, be real about it. Like, this is something that I do. Literally, I started my morning 5:30. I go to bed, we've been messaging, 12, 1 o'clock. This is something I have a passion for. It's not, that's what it's about. That's what my life is about. My family, my God, and doing this and helping people in this arena. Some of the most interesting stuff is training youth group students, which I'm really humbled and privileged to do in Israel. The youth groups invite me to come and train their madruchim, their youth leaders. How do we talk about sexuality? Do we talk about sexuality at all? And there's a process that we go through over there to empower the leaders to pick up on certain signs if there are issues there, abuse, and be able to support kids through certain things, but at the same time have very clear boundaries. Listen, you're 17, 18, 19 years old. You need to know what you can deal with and what you cannot deal with. And what are your structures within your youth group to report if there are issues that you can't deal with? So it's a very sensitive topic for a whole lot of reasons. And thank God we're moving forward and a lot of people are being educated.
That sounds amazing. And if we had more time, I would ask a lot more questions, maybe try to test you, ask you some specifics about myself and use myself as a guinea pig, but we're not going to do that today. Right, exactly. But for those out there who are in search of enhancing their relationships, family relationships, bringing peace, passion to your lives, go to ravnatan.com, RAVNATAN.com. Get in touch with Rabbi Rav Natan Alexander, who lives here in Israel and is helping people with their lives, enhancing their lives of all people of all ages, all over the world, it sounds like. So go check out his website and Facebook, Twitter, any other way to get in touch with you?
I don't have Twitter yet, but Facebook, Rav Natan Alexander. My email is ravnatana@gmail.com. Facebook is, I post almost daily Facebook Lives there, different videos, there's blogs. Go take a look. And there's a lot of free videos also on my website. If you go to my website, there's webinars that we run almost weekly. And it's a lot easier when you turn up to a webinar and it's not one-on-one, you and your wife, you and your husband sitting there, but you can sit there in a crowd and you can learn from there. So go take a look, and I look forward to connecting with you.
I want to thank you so much for your time, Rav Natan. And again, if you missed any part of the show, you can catch it again. You can download it on SoundCloud, on iTunes, and it's very important stuff. Both the information that we just talked about and Rav Natan and how he's enhancing relationships, and also the first part of the show dealing and coping with the horrible tragedy we had here in Israel, the death of 10 young people this past week. That's all the time we have for here on Israel Uncensored at the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. Get in touch with me. I appreciate each and every correspondence, all the emails, all the feedback, whether you love the show, hate the show. If there's anybody else you want to see on the program, things we're not discussing that you want to hear about, please feel free. Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, at Josh Hasten. And most importantly, from now until we speak again next week, next Monday, everybody out there in the wonderful world of ours, everybody out there, please, please be safe. Shalom, shalom from Gush Etzion, Israel.